Hey there, welcome to SUPlift, a place where ideas meet with resources to create something special. Today is our seventh SUPlift Talk. We've already had a chance to talk about VC funding, about angel investing, about scalability, all kinds of different ways of seeking funding for your company. And today we will be talking about something incredibly interesting. So I'm not going to introduce it as much because I would like to delve into it as quickly as possible. Today with us we have a very special guest. There's Tim O'Callaghan from Crowdcube. Tim is a senior partnership manager, and I will give him the floor. Tim, thank you very much for being here. We are incredibly grateful to have you as our guest. And I will quickly go and ask, what is Crowdcube and what senior partnership manager does?
Sure, of course. Well, first of all, Kuba, hello, and thank you very much for having me on. I think this sounds like a great initiative to inform and educate people on different types of fundraising and the availability of these different forms. As you said, angel investing, VC investing. I mean, equity crowdfunding is just one of many forms that are available to founders these days. And I think that they shouldn't go against those types of funding. They shouldn't go against angel investing, for example, or VC funds. They should go alongside them. They should complement one another. So Crowdcube is the first equity crowdfunding platform to come into existence around 11 or 12 years ago, founded in Exeter in the southwest of England. Founded by two entrepreneurs, one who is heavily focused on product, one who is focused on marketing. It was a great tie. It was a great match in order to figure out the needs of investors, the needs of companies. And I guess to bring it all back, what they're really trying to do and what Crowdcube is really trying to do is democratize the investment process to allow me or you, or anyone else for that matter, to invest in companies that they believe in and to invest in companies that are private. This right was previously reserved for accredited investors, for angel investors, and for VC firms. And nowadays, it's accessible to everyday people who can prove that they understand the risks, of course, because there are going to be risks involved in any form of investing. So once they can show that they're able to do so, they should be entitled to invest in these private companies. The investment typically starts from as little as £10 or €10. Now, my role in the company as Senior Partnerships Manager is speaking with partners such as SUPlift, as an example, but also speaking with the likes of accelerator programs, VCs, corporate finance firms, brokers, people who essentially will come across startups and scale-ups on a regular basis and may introduce them to us because we can facilitate certain capital raising, we can help them with their growth strategy, but also so that we can then introduce companies that we work with back to other partners that can help them in different ways. An example of that could be digital marketing agencies who can help founders that we've worked with before or help founders that we're currently raising for. So that's essentially my role, essentially acting as a little bit of a middle person between companies and ourselves.
So Crowdcube is not only a platform to enable the startups to campaign their projects to the private individuals that can just invest in them, but you also cooperate with accelerators. So if I create a project, if I create a campaign, I can basically also find, apart from investors, apart from private angel investors, I can also go into accelerator. I can also find other funds and other possibilities to grow my business.
Yes, of course. We actually have an upcoming accelerator program in partnership with a Virgin startup called Collective Impact Program, which is essentially a 6-week program geared towards impact-driven companies, helping them to get on their way towards embarking on an equity crowdfunding route. Yeah, so that's one thing. But in terms of what we do as such, so yes, of course, the main thing is we are a platform to facilitate investment from private investors into private companies, and essentially help them to grow in ways that can't be replicated through capital alone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, getting back to the question you asked me, what else do we do? We
Mm-hmm.
provide introductions. We can also provide them with a lot of support along the way, a lot of support with their own marketing strategy, their own growth strategy. We can provide them with once they've raised, we can provide them with discounted services to a lot of our partners, Stripe, AWS, Amazon. A lot of these partners would be working with us, and we can essentially give raising companies and fire funded community members access to discounted rates from these larger companies. We essentially like to act as consultants that can help them grow and help them realize their true potential.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we know that it's incredibly important to be able to find those companies because it definitely helps you grow. And if I have a startup, is there any admission process um, to start
Of
crowdfunding on
course,
Crowdcube?
yes. So we would have to be somewhat selective about who we allow onto the platform. Now we are FCA regulated, and we have to be fair to our investors. We have to ensure that what they're investing in seems like a good deal. It seems like something that is
Hmm.
an acceptable company. The company checks out. We have to carry out certain due diligence on the founding team, senior management, and the company itself to ensure that they weren't in hot water in the past in terms of bankruptcy, for example. We have to ensure that is all adequate and all checks out before we can go ahead. But essentially, what we also do is we will have an initial consultation call with a company. This will be carried out by one of our fundraising managers. They will delve into the specifics about the company, about what it is they do, why they're looking to raise, why they're looking to incorporate crowdfunding as part of their strategy, and delve into this in more detail. Sometimes it can be done in one call and a few emails. Sometimes it may take a little bit longer. But there is certainly a selection process involved in this to ensure that it is an investable opportunity as well, and to ensure that they can gain momentum from the campaign itself.
So, is there a limit for how many startups you can accept? That, for example, during a month you have a certain quota that you accept, like when an accelerator like YC accepts their startups that they want to help accelerate, they have a certain number of ones that they can accept. Do you have
I
that
think it
as
makes
well?
sense for these accelerator programs like YC and those. Our accelerator program that we're launching does have a limit of 20. But in terms of bringing companies onto the platform to go on and raise, there is no real limit, although there's a natural tendency not to
Hmm.
put it above a certain threshold. On average, these days we will have between 20 to 30 companies live at any one time. The campaigns stay live for up to
Hmm.
30 days in the public stage. Now, the public stage, they can choose to go for 30 days or they can choose to a lower period of time. Prior to this point, they can be live to their private network. That means they can gain investment from
Hmm.
private network of investors, their friends, their family, customers, suppliers, you name it. They can all get on board prior to it being launched to the wider Crowdcube audience. And you can typically expect that to be in and around 10 plus in this phase at any one time, in addition to the 20 to 30
Hmm.
live on the site. There's no real limit as such. I expect as we grow, this number of live campaigns at any one time will presumably grow with it. I'm sure that 5 or 7 or 8 years ago, there certainly weren't as many campaigns live at any one time. It's constantly growing.
Hmm. Okay, so let's take a little step back, if
Of
that's
course.
okay, and come back to the whole concept of crowdfunding. So, if I want to create a campaign and Crowdcube decides that I am worthy, let's say, that my company is worthy, and I go through the selection process, could you tell me what happens then? Because, of course, I understand private people will be able to donate to invest. Maybe no, donate is not a good word. Invest in my in my startup. But what do I do the moment that I receive information that Crowdcube has accepted my campaign?
So first of all, on the point of donating, there is a different type of crowdfunding, donations-based crowdfunding. This is the likes of GoFundMe. Crowdcube is solely focused on equity crowdfunding, meaning that
Yes.
I know you said donated. I just want to touch on that as well before we move on any further.
No, of
So
course.
essentially,
Sorry, of course.
we
Yes.
allow people to actually purchase shares in the company themselves. That means that you have actually own that asset. You own a part of the company by investing through Crowdcube. You're not giving the company money and not expecting anything in return. You're hopefully going to receive a return on this investment. It's an investment at the end of the day. You may not receive a return on the investment, or you may receive a significant return on the investment. That is all part of the risk, but that's also part of the story as well. Why you become very much invested in the company, and why you become very much a backer of what they do, why you believe in what they do, and you can really help them grow because you have your skin in the game in terms of their success. So that is just a little sidebar that I wanted to touch on.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the campaign itself, once you've been accepted, let's just say, we'll accept you, you'll accept our terms, then it'll be passed over to a campaign manager. So this will be a dedicated campaign manager on the Crowdcube side. They will essentially act as a project manager between you and between those of us on the Crowdcube team, the wider Crowdcube team, such as the legal team, the compliance team, the marketing team. Essentially, the campaign manager will guide you from start to finish when it comes to the campaign preparation phase in particular, and while you're live on the site. So during that period of time, typically takes about 4 to 6 weeks for preparation, from initial conversation when they've signed the agreement to when they actually go live to their network or live to the Crowdcube wider audience. So 4 to 6 weeks is taken up with preparation of the video, preparation of the pitch deck. There's a pitch text. Every pitch has a text, has essentially like a landing page on our site where people can click onto it. They can learn more.
Mm-hmm.
They can learn about the senior management team. And during this, there needs to be a lot of back and forth about compliance checks, making sure everything checks out. We can't, at the end of the day, lie to investors. We don't want to lie to investors. We want to make sure everything is as open as possible, and we need to make sure that everything checks out. There's a little bit of back and forth involved in this process, and that, I guess, is part of the point that takes the longest bit of time to begin with. In addition to this, you want to get your own network of potential investors warmed up as well. So putting together a marketing plan, putting together a strategy on how to outreach these people is quite important during this phase as well. And what's often done at that time is this, what's called a pre-registration page, which is typically done separate to Crowdcube. So it would be done on the company's actual website as a landing page where people can be guided towards this and they can pre-register their interest in investing in the company. You can essentially give an outline of why they're raising, what they're hoping to do, who should invest, and some of the risks that are involved in such an investment. And then you can gauge how much you expect to raise from that particular network initially. That's all done during this phase as well. So that's kind of the work that goes on when you've been accepted, but before you go live.
And what would you say is the most important thing a founder needs to do while creating a campaign for crowdfunding campaign? Because, if you go to a VC, you need to have a strong pitch deck that pinpoints all the most important information in quite of a, let's say, short form and a good way of presenting things, right? And here, what is the most important information that you have to convey in order to create this community of people that would want to back you up?
I guess everyone would have a different answer to this question, but I feel like clear messaging is probably the most important part. Clear messaging that evokes emotion, I guess, because if you can be really clear and transparent about who you are, what it is that you do, and why you're doing it, and then if you can say it in a way that people can actually get behind and people can believe in, then you're sure to have a successful campaign once you build on a little bit of momentum. And one other point to note as well is gathering that initial investment is also quite an important aspect of any raise. So as I said at the beginning, we tend to co-invest alongside other institutional investors in a lot of these raises. That means that building some momentum by getting some of this initial investment in the door is quite important. It's quite important to ensure that you're not starting from a 0 point. Investors, in particular retail investors, are fantastic followers. They love to follow what people have invested in before, what other people believe in, and then it's not that they can't think for themselves, because anyone that wants to invest can do so, but they would like to have seen that other people have invested before them, before they want to invest themselves.
Okay, and can I see who has invested in a certain campaign?
You can see the number of investors that have invested in a certain campaign, but you can also see if there has been significant institutional money going into the campaign as well. We will make that information public, essentially. This information, if it was done in a previous round, will also be available on Companies House or on one of these other sites, Crunchbase, Bowhurst. That should be available as well.
Okay, and then I think one of the most important questions would be, what are the advantages of crowdfunding in comparison with other possibilities?
Yeah, of course. Very good question. It's probably the most important question of all, I guess. It's all about community engagement and activating this community of people who are potentially currently customers and you want to turn into investors, but also turning people who are not currently customers but who see it on Crowdcube and want to then become customers as well as being investors. So bridging that line as well between customers and company by creating this link, which is the investment essentially. So you're much more likely to refer a friend to your company if you're an investor because you see the potential upside for you. But also, if you're an investor, it means that you believe in the company enough to not just purchase the product one-off, but also to go out there and invest your own money in the company because you really believe in what they do. Therefore, you're much more likely to refer a friend to the company. You're much less likely to leave them as a customer. So you become a really active customer of theirs, an active user who's going to go out there and spread the message in a way that the average customer might not, because you might come and go. And that's one side. And also it's to allow companies to get new information from these customers that they wouldn't have got otherwise, because you're going to become much closer to them. You can treat it as a community of people, a community of people who are, as I said, very much involved in seeing the company grow, rather than a straightforward customer who will purchase the product and then leave. So really, it's to create that community engagement.
And when it comes to equity, because crowdfunding being a equity-based seeking for funding, how much of an equity in comparison to other possibilities of funding do we as a startup have to, let's say, give away in order to receive this equity?
So there's no straightforward answer to that because it varies dramatically depending on how much they're looking to raise and the valuation. So there isn't any specific percentage that you can say. People will tend to be more comfortable giving away 20% if you're a smaller, newer company, significantly less than that if you're a more established company. If the valuation is 100 million and you're looking to raise $1 million, it's roughly speaking 1%. It varies so much. What I would say is that the terms that the retail investors are coming in on will be the same as the terms that an institutional investor are coming in on. So same price for each share. So you have to be somewhat aware of the fact that the shares should be cheaper in terms of the price per share, but you can have much more shares distributed in that sense. But £10, of course, being a good starting point.
That was exactly what I had in mind. So basically, you have to mind how much a share you want to you want to
Yes, of
put in,
course.
not to limit yourself to the
You don't
amount of
want to
people
have it in a
being able
situation
to
where one
invest.
share is £1,000 because that will not attract the highest number of investors. Um, if it's £10, then it means
Hmm.
that the people who want to only invest £10 can do so. And at the end of the day, getting new investors to follow you and believe in you is quite important. So it's something to be conscious of for sure. I wouldn't then advise anyone to part with too much equity in their company too early on. So 20 or 30% seems like a very reasonable ceiling.
Understand. Okay, and let's go to the next step then, which is I've already put my campaign on Crowdcube, and I'm in the period of trying to attract the community and the investors. Could you tell me what then happens with me and my development as a founder? So, can I change something? Because I presume that if I contact my private investors, they need to have all the information that they can have because they need to understand what is happening. But many companies, especially the ones at the beginning, they pivot, right? They change a lot at the beginning stages of their company. And can I do this? Mm, how much can I get into my company and try to change stuff
Yeah,
and
I wouldn't advise.
try to make it
I wouldn't
better or
advise
different?
making many significant material changes to the company itself while you're raising. I think that's a dangerous territory to get into. At the end of the day, we need to be clear, fair, and not misleading to all of our investors. That's kind of some of the really important aspects from a regulatory standpoint. So when we are raising for you, you're the founder, for example, and if you want to make significant changes to the company or to the direction that the company is going in, or even to like very senior management, C level C level people, then we will need to make sure that this message has been sent out to all investors that are currently investing and all potential investors. It could cause the campaign to be put on hold. It could cause the campaign to be shut down for a short period of time, and it could cause it to be completely scrapped or
Hmm.
restarted if anything really dramatic happens in this period of time. So I'd advise it to be business as usual. Focus on improving sales, getting new partners in the door, and really working to use this as a way to grow your company, not as a way to make drastic changes to what you're doing. So, yeah, I definitely would advise keep doing as you're doing. Yeah,
Not to do
not
it.
to go changing things dramatically.
And what happens if if a startup does not manage to get the funding, does not, yeah, basically fails the
Yeah,
goals
of
on
course.
Crowdcube?
Good question. So we have a minimum target that's set, which is the 100% mark that you'll see on the site if you ever were to take a look at an individual pitch page, and a maximum target. Now, the minimum target will correspond to the minimum capital that's required in order to complete what they've set out to do. Now, if they don't meet that minimum target, essentially the investors who have joined forces with them, who've come on board, won't be what they set out to do won't be achieved. So we can't actually close the round
Hmm.
successfully. We can't collect investment from the retail investors who've come on board through Crowdcube. So essentially, if they haven't reached that point, they've exceeded their time limit. It hasn't been a success. We're not going to transfer the funds into the company's account. We're not going to distribute the shares to the investors. We're also not going to charge for our service. We charge this solely based on success. So we're very much aligned to ensure that this does not happen. It rarely happens. I will say that. Less than 5% of campaigns that go live will find themselves in this situation. From time to time, for one reason or another, it does. And yeah, it hasn't been a success. Funds don't change hands. We don't charge anything for it. It's been dropped. Yeah. Let's hope that
That's
doesn't happen
that's
to
an
anyone
important
listening to this
information.
today.
Definitely. That's an important information that it's a very successful way of seeking funds if a startup manages to get through the selection
Yeah, yeah, we're
stage.
fully aligned to make sure that
Is there a
they get to that
possibility?
point.
Yeah, of course. And is there a possibility to extend the period of campaigning? If, for example, I'm really close to getting the goal, but I need a week
So,
or two.
in rare cases, we will extend it. There has to be some extenuating
Mhm.
circumstances in order for us to consider this. For example, if they are waiting on a significant investment from one or two investors, and that is due to land in the coming days, just outside that 30-day period, there's potential for us to do so. We rarely do, and yeah, again, there'd have to be exceptional circumstances for us to consider it. But again, this does happen. Every campaign is different, which is quite an interesting part of working at Crowdcube, or even what's quite interesting if you're an investor is that every campaign is different, every company is different. So you gotta adapt to that.
Great. Um, and then let's go to what companies can get to Crowdcube, and what are your expectations, maybe from your experience, for them to succeed? Because from my point of view, of course, the B2C companies should have the biggest success on during crowdfunding because they have a very clear connection to the customer, which means the investor. But what about B2B companies? Which ones are the most successful and have the biggest
Of course,
possibilities?
yeah. I mean, B2C companies are more of an obvious match for crowdfunding because they can really see the advantages in the user acquisition side, and the messaging should be much more clear because, again, they will be selling to retail investor like people. They'll be selling to the standard everyday customer, and they'll be trying to get those people to invest in them as well. So there's an obvious match there, an obvious crossover, and it certainly would lend itself much better to do that. Now, in the past, I feel like the vast majority of companies would have been B2C and would have been very much consumer focused. In recent years, this has changed a little bit. We're starting to see more and more B2B companies who are coming on board because they can see the advantage of this brand exposure and the fact that they can really get their name out there in a way that one raise from one investor can't do. There's a lot of publications that are written
Mm-hmm.
during crowdfunding campaign. They might find themselves on podcasts. We found some B2B companies to actually receive hundreds of applications to their jobs. Hundreds of people queuing up to become partners of theirs. So there are advantages to both, but as you said, a more obvious match in the B2C realm. Now, B2B companies that I've found, or that we have found to succeed the most and to succeed the best in terms of their crowdfunding campaign are B2B companies who are really focused on environmental issues, like the clean tech companies. Some significant examples I
Mm-hmm.
can think of would be um, marine power systems, and also like wind turbines. You can think of a lot of these clean tech giants. They can come along and people know that they're trying to change the world for the better, but there's also a good chance that this will become a significant financial reward for them as well as this industry is booming. So yeah, that definitely
Mm-hmm.
incites more investment than very difficult to understand, hard to digest B2B company when someone can not really see the advantage of it. So clean tech B2B, they do quite well.
Definitely. All right. And other possibilities like B2G, for example, or something like this. Do you have those at all, or is it mostly B2C and with some clean tech, environmental
Yeah,
B2B?
B2G is essentially B2B on a grander scale, but um, that again would be quite similar to the ones I just mentioned. These clean tech companies who may find
Mm-hmm.
themselves in a B2B or B2G scenario, or may find themselves, yeah, not selling to any smaller consumers whatsoever. If the messaging is
And
clear and if the impact is there, And if people can believe in what they're doing and want them to succeed, as well as the potential uplift, then there's no reason why uh, retail investors wouldn't invest in them.
And percentage-wise, how would you say on Crowdcube or your actual modern nowadays campaigns, percentage-wise, what is the balance of B2C versus B2B
Yeah,
and others?
so last I checked, now this is forever changing, but it was between 30 and 35% for
Hmm.
B2B. Yeah,
Okay.
between 30 to 35%. And I think that was actually between 30 to 35% of funds raised were for B2B companies. And B2B companies quite often would be larger raises, but in and around that level, one in three or one in three
And
or
the
one in
rest
four.
go,
Some of these then be B2B2C, that's like a smaller proportion of those.
uh-huh.
You might classify them as being either B2B or B2C. And then over 50% would certainly be in the B2C category. It's a good deal
Right.
over 50%, maybe closer to 60, 66 plus.
Very interesting. Um, and okay, and as an expert, as somebody who is inside this crowdfunding business, what would you say to founders thinking about starting a campaign? What advice? I'm not asking about a certain type, like 3 tips or something like this. What would you say to those
I would
founders?
say have a think about why it is you want to crowdfund and what you hope to gain from it. Have a think about the messaging and whether or not you feel this is an investable avenue for someone who wants to follow you essentially. Have a think about how you can portray your message in a clear and succinct way. And I think this is quite important for the company in the future as well, because if they can ensure that their messaging is clear to anyone that wants to view their pitch page, this will make it much easier for them in the future when they're thinking about, say, their marketing strategy, because they know that they can rely back on what they've already done in the past. Yeah, have a think about why you're doing it. Have a think about how to portray that message, and then have a think about the other investment that you might want to carry in to this round. For example, if there's institutional investors who are interested, you can use this as a means to kickstart a crowdfunding campaign. So have a think about that as well.
And one last question we always like to ask about mistakes. Um, what mistakes do you see the most when people start? I know you said that less than 5% of the campaigns actually fail, but from those that fail or from those that succeed but with a bumpy start, what mistakes do you see that the founders, especially the beginner founders, can what they can do to
I would
omit those?
say rushing into things, trying to rush the process, trying to skip steps, I think is something that can often affect the success of a campaign because, again, it's something that we've seen hundreds of times before. So we're not going to try to pull the wool over any founder's eyes and tell them to do something when they shouldn't. But founders might have a different view in their own mind. I mean, at the end of the day, the company to the founder is the most important thing in their life, and they don't want anything to stand in the way of that. Um, but these things take time, so you have to listen to the advice and accept that it will take time. If you rush into something, if you try to rush through it without having adequate preparation gone in, it won't land as well as something that's been really prepared well. And we're going to make sure that this doesn't happen. But sometimes founders may become impatient, which is fair, but it takes time. And make sure you have a bit of time to give.
Thankfully, that you provide managers to help
Exactly.
founders when creating
Exactly.
those
But
campaigns.
yeah, I mean, every company is different, so it's a learning process for everyone.
Yeah, and I'm very thankful that you came to us today to talk about crowdfunding because it's one of the most important ways to gather funds at the moment, and one that definitely is visible whenever a startup goes into the path of seeking funding. So, Tim, I'm very grateful that you came to answer our questions, and it's incredibly
Thank you very much,
interesting.
Kuba.
And
I really appreciate your time. Thanks
thank
for
you
having me
very
on.
much.
It's been a pleasure.